The Atari 2600 was a revolutionary console released in 1977. It made the idea of the use of cartridges containing a separate game code popular. While it wasn't the first to utilize this format, it's credited for making it a popular thing. Atari had originally planned for the system to only have a library of 9 games. They wanted it to have a longer lifespan than your average Pong unit. Ironically, the 2600 had the longest lifespan of any home video game console. It went from October 1977 to January 1992, 1 year before the Atari Jaguar was released. The bottom line is that this was an excellent system, and it was far ahead of its time. The 2600 started to get competition with more advanced systems, but most of the time, the games on the other systems were nowhere near as fun as the games on the Atari 2600. So it had an excellent library of fun and addicting games. There's so many that I don't even know where to start. I guess first we'll start out with Combat, the game that came with every Atari 2600. You play a tank in a war against the second player. The idea is to shoot the other tank as many times as you can before the end. Even though it's only a 2-player game, it's still very awesome with its competitive action and intense gameplay. I can't get enough of it. The control takes a little bit of time to get used to, but it's easy after a while. There's all sorts of variations of tanks in Combat. There's Tank Pong, where the projectile that you've just shot bounces off the walls for a short period of time. This one is definitely harder than the regular tanks, because it's both hard trying to hit the person, but it could also be challenging trying to get out of the way. Oh well, I love challenge. There's also Plane Games. It's really just an aerial version of tanks, so there's not a whole lot to say about it. It still has the intense action and gameplay that tanks has. It's pretty neat. So if you collect Atari 2600 games, then this is a must-have. Check it out. Next we have Asteroids. In Asteroids, you're a spaceship in the middle of an asteroid field. The idea is to shoot all of them off. And after you've destroyed all of them, they automatically come back. The main goal in Asteroids is to get a high score. It's a pretty easy game, but it's very addicting. You don't even know how satisfying it is blasting all the asteroids away until you've played this game. I can't even express in words how awesome this game is. You just have to play it because it's one of the best games the Atari 2600 has to offer. Space Invaders, the cult classic of the Atari 2600. This is the game that put the Atari 2600 on the map. Some people bought the Atari just for Space Invaders. Anyways, the objective of the game is to defend the Earth from the Space Invaders. You do so by shooting torpedoes at the invaders. In many ways, this version is better than the arcade. Not many games on the 2600 are able to say that. With nice vibrant graphics and over 112 different variants of Space Invaders, which include invisible Space Invaders, I can't possibly praise this game enough. It's awesome! Definitely check this one out if you get the chance. Berserk, another Atari classic. Okay, in this one, you're a criminal trying to escape from a maze of robots. It's pretty cool. The gameplay is addicting as all hell. Having a strategy and being patient is a necessity in this game, because if you go too fast, you'll end up touching the walls and die. And also, you can wait for the robots to walk into the walls, and then they die. Yeah! Numbnuts. Overall, Berserk is a fantastic game, and is definitely one of my favorite games on the Atari. See, that's the thing with the 2600. There's so many memorable games on it that it's just overwhelming for me. This is PacMan. Okay, we all know how this one goes, so I won't even bother explaining the objective or the story. The control is pretty stiff, and you have to give it quite a bit of force in order to get him to go where you want. It definitely doesn't look as good as the arcade, but you can't really judge the Atari for its graphics though. Overall, it's not bad, but it's just okay. I like the arcade version better. Next game, Pitfall, another classic Atari game. You play as Pitfall Harry in a jungle. Swinging on a vine to get over hazards is the key mechanism in this one. You get points when you get treasure like gold bars, diamond rings, etc. The graphics are nice and colorful and always a pleasure to look at. Pitfall is really fun even to this day. No doubt it's a classic with its great gameplay, excellent graphics, and very high replay value. Plaque Attack. Okay, in this one, you control a bottle of toothpaste shooting at foods inside of a person's mouth. It's pretty bizarre, but it's a nice fresh idea. The food that you shoot at ranges from strawberries, burgers, hot dogs, french fries, candy canes, donuts, etc., etc. It's a lot of fun. The game ends when all the teeth are gone. The graphics are colorful and nice to look at. They're better than a usual Atari game. I feel Plaque Attack was a very underrated game and didn't get the attention that it deserved. Breakout. Okay, I'm sure we all know how to play this one. Deflecting a ball at a brick wall until all the bricks are gone. This one utilizes the paddle controllers, which is a lot of fun to use because of how fluent it moves. These things tend to break easily, so it's always nice to have a spare. The graphics look nice in Breakout. The bricks have a lot of colors. It's a really mind-numbing game, but a very good one though. Another game that utilizes this type of controller on the Atari is Kaboom, which is debatably the best game on the Atari 2600. You control these 3 buckets and move them from side to side to try and catch bombs. It's so addicting that I can't even describe it. The bombs get faster as you go along. It has some pretty intense gameplay. The graphics are also excellent. They're very detailed and nicely done. Believe it or not, this game actually falls under my top 20 favorite games. Check it out. Ice Hockey, my favorite sport game on the Atari. The gameplay is awesome with non-stop action and a fluent control scheme. It keeps 2 players entertained for a good 3 hours. I'm not kidding. My friend and I sat down and played this for 3 hours straight. Can you blame us? It perfectly replicates hockey without being confusing or gimmicky. The animation is also nice on the players. If you love hockey, then go play Ice Hockey on Atari 2600. It fails to disappoint. Up next is boxing. I usually hate button mashers, but in this one it works. It's a button masher with a challenge. The challenge is what keeps it alive. The satisfying experience you get when you nail your opponent is out of this world. The characters are pretty funny looking, and the animation is great too. Check this one out, even if you're not a fan of the sport. It's still great fun. Alright, here's something special. Halo 2600. Yes, Halo on Atari. It was a homebrew game that was programmed by Ed Fries, a big-time Atari enthusiast, and the former president of game publishing at Microsoft. The game was available at the Classic Game Expo in 2010. It's a great 2D revision of Halo. It's very similar to Berserk, and the gameplay is very addicting. It's so much fun going up and killing these aliens. It's actually almost better than Halo on Xbox, at least in my opinion. The graphics are great. They're nice and colorful, and just very appealing to look at. The intro on the title screen is outstanding and enjoyable to hear. The sound effects are always awesome. I admire the sound that the Atari makes. Overall, it's a pretty easy game. Go check it out, if you can. You're lucky if it even comes up on eBay for $60. But it's a cool thing to have in your collection. Pole Position on Atari. It obviously doesn't look anywhere near as good as the arcade does, but who cares? The fun is still there. It's still addicting and challenging. Sometimes you have to give your Atari joystick quite a bit of force to get it to turn. But the best way to solve this problem is by plugging in a Sega Genesis controller into your Atari. I'm not kidding, it actually works. And so does anything else that has a 9-pin controller input. But the best one for pole position is the Genesis controller because of its fluent control of the D-pad. Overall, it's a good game for the 2600. Check it out. I don't want to drag this review on for too long. I have a huge collection of Atari 2600 games, and there's many that I want to talk about. But for time's sake, we're just going to breeze through a few more. Frogger, the game that defines excellence. Its fun gameplay and addicting quality is enough to keep anyone entertained. You control a frog that first has to cross a busy street and avoid getting hit by the traffic. Then you have to cross a river by hopping on a bunch of logs to get to the other side of the river. It's a nice replication of the arcade game. The game is full of bright colors and beautiful graphics. This is a game that anyone can play. Check it out. There's also Freeway, where you control a chicken to get to the other side of the road. It's very similar to Frogger, except here it's all about seeing the pattern. In order to see the pattern, you'll need to adjust your eyes first. You can't just sit back with one eye closed and play this. This makes for intense gameplay and magnificent action. I love it. E.T. the Extraterrestrial. The title screen looks promising, but don't let it fool you. You have to go into a bunch of pits and collect a bunch of phone parts, all while avoiding bad guys. Okay, let's start with the gameplay because it's absolutely terrible. First of all, there are pits scattered everywhere, and every time you get out of one, you end up falling into another one 2 seconds later. It's not fun, it's annoying. I can't stand it. It's difficult to get out of pits because the control is so freaking confusing. It's such a frustrating game, and it's horribly designed, and it was incredibly rushed. Darn it. No, I didn't want to go into the pit. Ugh. That's it. I can't take it anymore. This is the worst game I've ever played in my entire life. It's virtually unplayable. End of story. Next game. Indy 500 is a classic racing game. This one utilizes the driving controller, which works great because the control is so fluent and responsive. It's a one-screen game with a variety of play modes. There's a time trial mode where you play alone, which is actually more fun than it looks. And more. The simplicity is one of the many things that makes this game a masterpiece. Whether you're alone or with a friend, you can't go wrong with Indy 500, so go get it. So that's the Atari 2600. It had a huge impact on the video game industry and offered some of the best games ever. While it doesn't quite stand its ground today for most people, the legacy that this system made will never be forgotten.